The battlefield was quiet now. Too quiet. Hours ago, the land had been alive with the thunder of explosions, the sharp cries of soldiers, and the deafening roar of war machines. Now smoke drifted in thin streams across the ruined valley, curling like ghosts in the cold evening air. The ground was broken, covered in shattered metal, broken weapons, and the lifeless forms of those who had not made it out alive. Among the wreckage, Princess Elira of the Zareth people lay half-buried beneath the twisted frame of a transport craft. Her breathing was shallow and pain burned through her body with every small movement. Her golden armor, once polished and bright, was cracked and scorched by plasma fire. Blood trickled slowly down her side, staining the ground beneath her. Her people had run. That truth was heavier than the wreckage that pinned her to the earth. When the battle had turned against them, when defeat had become certain, her guards had pulled back. She remembered shouting for them to stand, remembered the look in their eyes, fear, not loyalty. Then they had fled, leaving her behind to be swallowed by the chaos. Elira's mind raced between anger and despair. She was a princess of her people, trained to lead, trained to inspire. Yet here she was, abandoned, helpless, forgotten in the shadow of war. She thought of her father, the High Sovereign, who would see her disappearance as weakness. She thought of her brothers, who would not grieve but would only see an opportunity to claim more power for themselves. A cold wind moved across the valley, carrying with it the faint scent of burning fuel and iron. Elira shivered, not from the cold but from the heavy loneliness pressing down on her heart. For a moment, she considered letting go, closing her eyes forever. After all, what was the point of surviving if her own people had already abandoned her? But then she heard something. At first she thought it was only the groan of the wreckage settling in the wind. But no, it was steady, rhythmic. Heavy footsteps. She forced her eyes open, her vision blurry from blood loss and exhaustion. Through the haze of smoke, she saw a figure moving across the battlefield. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark armor scorched and battered. A human soldier. Her breath caught. The Zareth and the humans had been locked in bitter war for years. Every story she had heard painted them as merciless, relentless creatures. Humans, her people said, were predators that fought with a fire unmatched by any species. She had been taught to fear them, to despise them, and now one of them was walking toward her. Her first thought was that he would finish her, that he had come to deliver the final blow to a wounded enemy. She tried to lift her arm to reach for the blade still at her side, but pain shot through her body and her strength failed her. The weapon clattered weakly to the ground. The human noticed. He stopped a few paces away, his dark eyes locking onto hers. His helmet was gone, revealing a face lined with exhaustion, grit, and quiet determination. His uniform bore the marks of battle, and a deep cut ran along his cheek, but his eyes, those strange human eyes, were steady. For a long moment, neither moved. Smoke curled between them, and the silence of the battlefield pressed in. Elira whispered, her voice hoarse, "Do it. End it." The human frowned, confusion flickering across his face. Instead of raising his weapon, he stepped closer. Slowly, carefully. His gaze swept over her, not with the coldness of a killer, but with the sharpness of someone assessing a wound. "You're pinned," he said quietly, his voice rough but calm. "You'll bleed out if you stay here." Elira blinked, not sure if she had heard him correctly. He spoke not with hate, not with scorn, but with concern. Her pride surged, clashing with her weakness. "Why do you care? I am your enemy." The human soldier crouched beside her, placing his rifle down within reach but not pointing it at her. He pressed one hand against the wreckage, testing its weight. His other hand rested briefly on his knee as he studied her. "My name is Marcus," he said after a pause. "Captain Marcus Kane, and right now you're not my enemy. You're just someone who's dying." That's reason enough, Elira's mind reeled. This made no sense. Humans were supposed to be ruthless, brutal. Yet here this one was, kneeling beside her, offering help when her own soldiers had left her behind. "You should finish me," she whispered again, though her voice cracked with weakness. "Spare me the shame." Marcus's jaw tightened. "No, I've seen too much death today. I'm not adding to it if I can help it." Before she could protest, he pushed against the wreckage with all his strength. His muscles strained, his teeth clenched, and the metal groaned as it shifted. Elira cried out as the pressure on her chest and legs eased. With one last heave, Marcus shoved the broken frame aside and freed her. Elira gasped, her lungs filling with air more freely now, though every breath still burned. She looked up at him, confused, angry, and strangely grateful all at once. Marcus reached for his pack and pulled out a small field kit. "Hold still," he muttered, kneeling beside her again. He pulled a sterilizing patch from the kit and pressed it gently against the bleeding wound on her side. Alira hissed in pain, her claws twitching against the dirt, but he did not flinch. He worked with practiced hands, wrapping a bandage around her waist, tightening it enough to stop the bleeding but not so tight as to crush her. "You'll live," he said at last, sitting back on his heels. "But you're weak. You won't get far without help." Alira stared at him. His words, his actions, they tore through everything she had been taught. He should not care. He should not save her. And yet he did. Why? She demanded suddenly, her voice sharp despite her weakness. "Why save me? You could have left me to die." Marcus looked at her with eyes that carried a quiet weight. "Because no one deserves to be left behind. Not even an enemy." For a long time Alira said nothing. She could not. Her heart warred with itself, torn between suspicion and a strange, unsettling sense of respect. Above them, the sky darkened as night began to settle over the battlefield. The silence grew deeper, broken only by the distant crackle of fires. Alira closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. But this time she did not think of giving up. Somewhere in the haze of her pain she felt a strange new spark of hope, not because of her people, not because of her rank, but because of the human soldier who had chosen to save her when no one else would. And though she would not admit it aloud, not yet, a part of her wondered if perhaps the stories about humans were wrong. Perhaps there was more to them than war. The night deepened across the battlefield. The broken machines stood like dark statues, and smoke still curled into the cold sky. The stars above shone faintly, hidden now and then by drifting clouds. The silence was heavy, broken only by the low crackle of fires that still burned here and there. Marcus Kane sat close to the alien princess he had saved. He could see she was still weak, her body trembling, her breaths uneven. The bandages he had wrapped around her side slowed the bleeding, but he knew it was only a temporary solution. She needed better care or she would not last long. Alira's eyes fluttered open. They were strange eyes, luminous in the dim light, reflecting the faint glow of distant fires. For a moment she simply stared at him, the human soldier, the man who had freed her from certain death. Her throat was dry, her voice barely above a whisper. "You should not have done this." Marcus raised his head from where he had been adjusting his gear. "Why not?" he asked. "Because we are enemies," Alira said. Her words came with difficulty, as if each one weighed heavy. "You gain nothing by saving me. Only risk." Marcus shrugged, though the tiredness in his eyes betrayed how much the day had cost him. "Maybe, but I've seen enough bodies for one day. Didn't feel right leaving another behind." Alira's lips tightened. His answer was so simple, yet it unsettled her. In her people's world, choices were never made for such reasons. Every decision was tied to strategy, to gain, to power. Yet here this human sat, acting on nothing more than his own sense of right and wrong. She turned her face away, ashamed of her weakness. Yet deep inside she wondered why it mattered to him. Why did he not treat her as prey? Marcus, meanwhile, pulled a small water canister from his pack. He held it out toward her. "Drink, you need strength." Alira hesitated. What if it was poisoned? What if this was some cruel trick? But his face held no deception, only quiet determination. Slowly she accepted it, lifting the canister with shaking hands. The water touched her lips, cool and pure, and she drank as much as her body allowed. When she finished, she handed it back without a word. Marcus gave a short nod. "Better?" She did not answer. Her pride fought against admitting weakness. But in truth, the water steadied her, even if only a little. For a while, silence stretched between them. The firelight flickered, shadows danced on the broken ground, and the night grew colder. Marcus finally broke the stillness. "What's your name?" he asked. Alira looked at him sharply. Her first instinct was to refuse. But something about his voice, steady, calm, unforced, made her pause. After a long silence, she answered softly. "Alira, daughter of the High Sovereign." Marcus's brow furrowed slightly. He was no expert on her people, but the title sounded important. He guessed she was more than just a soldier who had been left behind. Yet he did not press the matter. "Well, Alira," he said, "I'm going to keep you alive, whether you like it or not." Her lips parted, caught between disbelief and a strange feeling she could not name. "You think you can?" Marcus allowed himself the faintest hint of a smile. I've kept myself alive through worse. You'll manage too. Hours passed. Marcus kept watch, his rifle within reach, his eyes scanning the shadows for movement. The battlefield was dangerous even after the fighting ended. Scavengers, patrols, and machines that had not yet powered down could still bring sudden death. Elira drifted between sleep and waking. Pain burned through her, but what struck her more was the human's presence. He did not abandon her. He did not treat her wounds as an obligation. He guarded her, silent but steady, as if her life mattered. When dawn came, pale light spread across the valley, revealing the devastation more clearly. The broken shells of transports and war machines cast long shadows. The air was colder now and the smoke had thinned. Marcus rose to his feet, stretching the stiffness from his muscles. He looked down at Elira. We can't stay here. Too exposed. Elira frowned. I can hardly walk. Then I'll help, Marcus said simply. Her pride resisted again. She was a princess, a leader. She should not depend on an enemy, least of all a human. But her body betrayed her. Her strength was gone. She nodded once, reluctantly. Marcus knelt beside her. Lean on me. She hesitated, then placed her arm over his shoulder. He rose carefully, lifting her with surprising gentleness for someone so battle-worn. She stumbled at first, but his grip steadied her. Slowly, step by step, they began to move away from the battlefield ruins. The land beyond the battlefield was rough, filled with broken ground and scattered debris. Craters from bombardments dotted the earth, and twisted metal jutted up like jagged teeth. Each step was painful for Elira, but Marcus never let her fall. As they walked, she studied him quietly. His face was tired, yes, but there was something strong beneath the exhaustion. His eyes carried weight, but not despair. She wondered how many battles he had fought, how many losses he had seen. Finally, curiosity overcame her. Why do you fight? She asked. Marcus glanced at her. Because I have to. That is no answer. He walked in silence for a moment, then spoke again. I fight so the people behind me don't have to. I fight so someone else can live in peace. That's enough for me, Elira frowned. His words were strange to her ears. Among her people, war was for conquest, for power, for pride, but this human spoke of something different, something she did not fully understand. By midday, they reached a small ridge overlooking a stretch of ruined forest. Marcus decided it was safe enough to rest. He guided Elira to a fallen tree, helping her sit carefully. Her body ached, but her mind was restless. She watched as Marcus moved with quiet purpose, searching the area, gathering dry wood and setting a small fire. He seemed used to surviving alone. When he returned, she spoke again. Do you not fear me? I could kill you when your guard is down. Marcus met her gaze without flinching. Maybe, but I don't think you will. Her eyes narrowed. And why not? Because if you wanted me dead, you wouldn't be talking to me now, he said simply. She had no reply. His calmness disarmed her more than any weapon could. As the fire burned low, Marcus shared his rations. The food was simple, dry bars and nutrient packs, but he offered them without hesitation. Elira tasted them cautiously. The flavor was bland, almost bitter, but the energy it gave her eased the weakness in her limbs. You share food with an enemy, she said softly, almost to herself. Marcus shrugged. You're not my enemy right now. You're just someone who needs help. Her chest tightened at those words. She remembered her own guards, fleeing without a thought for her life. She remembered the look of fear in their eyes as they abandoned her. And now here was a human, one of the people she was taught to hate, choosing to keep her alive. It made no sense. And yet, in the quiet of the ruined land, it was the only thing that mattered. As the sun began to set again, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold, Elira looked at Marcus with new eyes. He was not what she expected. Not ruthless, not cruel. He was something else, something harder to name. Perhaps, she thought, there was more to these humans than she had been told. Perhaps this human, this soldier, was showing her a truth her people had hidden from her. And though she still carried pain, fear, and pride, a small part of her heart felt something she had not felt since before the battle began. Hope. The second night came quickly. The ruined battlefield faded into the distance, but the land beyond it was no safer. The sky was dark again, filled with rolling clouds that hid the stars. A cold wind swept across the broken earth, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke and ash. Marcus Kane sat near a small fire, his rifle across his knees. His eyes scanned the shadows around them. He had seen enough of these war zones to know danger never truly ended when the fighting stopped. Traps, stray patrols, or machines left to wander without command could strike at any time. Beside him, Princess Elira rested against the trunk of a fallen tree. Her body was weak, but her breathing was steadier than the night before. The bandages Marcus had wrapped around her wound were holding, though she still winced with every shift of her weight. She watched him quietly. The firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the hard lines of a man who had seen too much war. His uniform was torn, burned in places, and his boots carried the dust of endless marches. Yet his hands moved with calm control as he adjusted his weapon, checked his supplies, and added more wood to the fire. Elira broke the silence. "You act as if you have done this many times." Marcus glanced at her. "I have," her eyes narrowed slightly. "Do all humans live like this? Constantly fighting, constantly running?" "Not all," Marcus said, his tone quiet. "Most live in cities on worlds far from places like this. But soldiers like me, we don't get to see that kind of peace for very long." Elira studied him. His words were plain, but they carried weight. She thought of her own people, how soldiers were honored for glory, not endurance. Yet this human spoke of war as if it were a burden, not a prize. She turned her gaze to the fire, unwilling to admit the thought aloud. The next morning, Marcus woke her early. The sky was pale, the air heavy with mist. He helped her stand, letting her lean on him as they began to move again. Their goal was uncertain. He needed to find a safe place, perhaps an abandoned outpost, perhaps a human signal point. Anywhere they could rest longer without being hunted. The terrain was rough. Jagged rocks jutted from the earth and the ground was broken by old craters. Each step was slow for Elira, but Marcus never let her fall. At midday, they reached a stream running between twisted trees. Marcus knelt, filling his canteen. He tasted the water first, cautious, before letting Elira drink. She frowned at him. "You risk yourself before me." "Why?" Marcus shrugged. "Because you can't afford another risk." "I can," her chest tightened. She remembered again the moment her guards had fled. Not one of them had offered such care. And here was a human, an enemy, risking himself for her. As the day stretched on, the dangers of the land grew clearer. At one point, a shadow moved through the trees ahead. Marcus froze, raising his hand for silence. Elira held her breath, watching as a hulking machine stepped into view. It was one of the war constructs left behind, its sensors glowing faint red, its metal body scarred but still deadly. It scanned the area, its heavy steps shaking the ground. Marcus whispered, "Don't move." The machine paused, turning its head slightly, then moved on. They stayed frozen until it vanished into the mist. Elira exhaled slowly. "You knew it would not see us." Marcus shook his head. "No, we were lucky." Her eyes lingered on him. He admitted truth, even when it revealed weakness. That honesty unsettled her, yet also made her trust him more than she wished. By evening, their journey slowed. Elira's body trembled with each step, and Marcus finally decided they could not go farther. He guided her into the shelter of a rocky overhang, where they made camp again. As he built the fire, Elira spoke. "You could leave me here. Go on alone. You would move faster, survive better." Marcus looked at her, his expression firm. "Not happening. Why?" She pressed, frustration rising in her voice. "You owe me nothing." "I am not your duty." Marcus set down a branch, meeting her gaze. "Because you're alive, and because no one deserves to be abandoned. I told you before, I won't leave you." Her pride cracked under his words. She turned away, hiding the emotion that burned in her chest. The days passed slowly, each one filled with the struggle of survival. Marcus hunted small creatures for food, teaching Elira how to cook them over the fire despite her protests. He showed her how to bind her wound more tightly, how to ration water, how to move quietly through dangerous ground. At first, Elira resisted. She was a princess raised in command, not survival. But Marcus's patience never faltered. He explained simply, demonstrated calmly, and never mocked her mistakes. Slowly, against her will, she began to learn. One night, as they sat near the fire, she asked, "Why do you fight so hard for others, even for me?" Marcus was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "Because I've lost people before, people I should have protected. I won't make that mistake again." His voice carried a pain she had not heard before. She did not ask further, but she remembered his words. On the 5th day of their journey, a storm rolled in. Dark clouds blotted out the sky and rain fell in heavy sheets. The wind howled through the trees and the ground turned to mud beneath their feet. Marcus wrapped his cloak around Elira, shielding her from the worst of the rain. His own body was soaked, but he did not complain. They found shelter in a hollow between rocks where Marcus lit a small fire despite the storm. Elira sat close to him, shivering. The warmth of the fire helped, but more than that, his presence steadied her. She looked at him in the flickering light, wondering how a man so battered by war could still carry such strength. Finally, she whispered, "You are not what I was told humans were." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And what were you told?" "That you are merciless. That you live only for battle. That you cannot be trusted." Marcus gave a tired smile. "We're not all the same. Just like your people aren't all the same." She considered this. The storm raged outside, but within the small shelter she felt something she had not felt in days. Safety. When the storm passed, the land smelled of wet earth and smoke. Marcus led her onward, always steady, always watchful. Each trial they faced, hunger, cold, fear, seemed to pull them closer together. Elira's view of him changed, slowly but surely. He was no longer just a soldier, no longer just a human. He was the reason she still breathed, the reason she still had hope. And though her pride whispered against it, her heart began to see him as something more than an ally. He was a protector. By the time the sun set on their 7th day of survival, they reached the edge of an abandoned outpost, its towers broken, its walls covered in vines. Marcus scanned it carefully, his hand never leaving his rifle. "This will do," he said, "at least for tonight." Elira looked at the ruins, then at him. Despite everything, she felt a strange calm. She was still far from her people, far from safety, but she was not afraid because she was not alone. The ruined outpost rose before them as the sun dipped low on the horizon. Its walls were cracked, overgrown with climbing vines, and its towers leaned slightly from years of neglect. Yet even in decay it offered safety, a place removed from the dangers of the open battlefield. Marcus Kane led Princess Elira through the broken gates. Every step was cautious. The outpost could be unstable, and remnants of automated defenses or scavenger patrols might still linger. He had learned long ago to assume danger, even in abandoned places. Elira followed closely, leaning on him when her legs wavered. The past week of survival had drained her strength, but it had also changed her. She no longer relied only on pride or rank. She had begun to rely on Marcus, and secretly she was grateful for it. Inside the main hall of the outpost, Marcus examined the interior. Dust covered every surface, and debris from collapsed ceilings littered the floor, yet the structure was solid enough for them to rest safely for a few hours. He guided Elira to a corner where the stone walls blocked most of the wind. "Sit," he said gently. "You need to rest fully if you're going to keep moving." She obeyed, though not without hesitation. Being cared for by an enemy, human or otherwise, was a strange and unfamiliar feeling. But as her muscles loosened against the hard stone, she realized she needed this rest more than she had wanted to admit. Marcus knelt beside her, unpacking a small kit of food and water. He handed her a simple ration bar, one she had learned to eat cautiously during their journey. She tore off a piece and chewed slowly, feeling its energy flow through her body. "Better?" he asked, noticing her limp had lessened. "Somewhat," she admitted. Her pride would not let her say more. Marcus nodded. "Good, that's progress." For a long while they sat in silence. Outside, the wind whispered through broken windows, carrying the distant smell of smoke and wet earth. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was a moment of peace, rare and precious in the midst of chaos. As night fell, Elira spoke again. "Marcus, why do you fight so hard for me?" Marcus glanced at her, the firelight catching the determined lines of his face. "Because you're alive, and because I've seen too many people die alone." Elira's gaze softened slightly. "You've lost many?" Marcus nodded, looking away for a moment. "Yes, friends, comrades. People I promised to protect. I can't save everyone, but I can save who's in front of me. Right now, that's you." She felt a strange warmth in her chest. Humans had always seemed to her like cold, merciless creatures, but this one was different. His loyalty, his care, it was not about glory or victory. It was about something deeper, something she had rarely seen in her own people. Her mind wandered to her soldiers, the ones who had abandoned her on the battlefield. They had left her behind without hesitation, fearing danger more than dishonor, and yet Marcus had risked himself for her, not for duty, not for rank, but simply because he could not leave someone behind. The next morning, Marcus prepared to scout the area beyond the outpost. The terrain was still dangerous, and he wanted to ensure they would not be caught off guard by patrolling forces. "Stay here," he instructed. "I'll check for threats." Elira's pride flared. "I can come with you." "I'm not helpless," he shook his head firmly. "You need rest. You've already walked too far." Her body resisted, but her mind knew he was right. Yet she felt a gnawing unease. If he went alone, anything could happen. She had learned to trust him, but the thought of danger separating them made her stomach tighten. After a moment, she whispered almost to herself, "I cannot let him face it alone." Marcus, sensing her concern, turned and gave a faint smile. "You've changed. That's a good thing. Shows you've learned something about survival and loyalty." Elira's lips parted, unsure whether to respond. She had learned much from him, but admitting it aloud still felt strange. Hours later, Marcus returned, confirming the area was safe for now. They gathered their minimal belongings and prepared to move again, deeper into the lands that stretched beyond the battlefield. The journey ahead would be long, and dangers were far from over. As they walked, Elira's thoughts drifted. Her people would see her differently if she returned. Perhaps they would view her as weak, a failure to survive without help. And yet she could not bring herself to turn away from Marcus. He had saved her life. He had shown her that loyalty and courage were not measured by rank or title, but by the choices one made for others. She realized that she faced a choice: return to her people, to the world she had known, or trust this human and the bond they had formed in the crucible of survival. The wind whispered through the broken trees as she considered her options. Her pride urged her to go back, to prove herself without relying on an enemy. But another voice, quieter and stronger, urged her to stay, to honor the life that had been given back to her. When she looked at Marcus, trudging ahead, steady and strong despite exhaustion, her decision became clear. She would not abandon him, not now, not after all he had done. That night they camped again, under a cliff that provided shelter from the wind. Marcus tended the fire while Elira sat nearby, her body aching but her mind restless. "I've made a decision," she said softly, hesitant to speak aloud. Marcus looked up. "Oh?" She hesitated, then met his gaze. I will not return to my people until I know what is right. I will stay with you. I will learn. I will survive." Marcus's eyes softened, a small smile forming. "Good choice. That's all anyone can ask." Her chest tightened, a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Trusting a human, an enemy by birth, was not easy. But she had learned that some things were stronger than fear: loyalty, courage, and the choice to protect another. The days that followed tested them in ways neither could have expected. Harsh weather, scarce food, and hidden dangers pushed them to the limits of endurance. Marcus remained patient, steady, and unwavering. Elira grew stronger with each passing trial, learning to trust her instincts and his guidance. She discovered that humans were capable of unexpected kindness, patience, and bravery. Marcus never demanded her obedience, never belittled her weakness. Instead, he encouraged her to find her own strength while offering protection when it was needed most. Slowly, she began to see him not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of a new kind of ally, someone who could teach her that loyalty and courage were not exclusive to one species. The bond between them deepened. Words were exchanged, small gestures of care given, and moments of silence shared in which no words were needed. Elira realized that she had found a companion in the most unlikely of places, someone whose choices and actions challenged everything she had been taught about humans and trust. One evening, as they rested near a stream, Marcus caught her watching him silently. "You're thinking too much," he said lightly, though his eyes were gentle. "I am thinking about loyalty," she replied, "and why you choose to protect someone like me." He looked away for a moment. "I protect people because I can. That's all the reason I need." Elira considered that. Simple, clear, honest. A human could survive with so little, and yet show such courage. She realized that she had been measuring strength all wrong. It was not about power, rank, or fear. It was about choices and actions. She smiled faintly, the first genuine smile in days. Then I will choose the same. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oh? I will protect you as you have protected me, she said. For a moment, silence reigned. Then he nodded, and in that quiet understanding, an unspoken promise passed between them. They would face whatever came next, together. The storm clouds of doubt and fear had passed for Elira. She knew her path was no longer dictated by her people or by her past. She had made her choice. Loyalty and courage were worth more than pride, and life was worth protecting. As they moved forward toward the uncertain lands ahead, she felt something new, a strength that came not from her title or training, but from the bond she shared with Marcus and the trust she now placed in him. And though the journey was far from over, for the first time since the battlefield, she felt certain of one thing. She would never abandon the human who had saved her. The morning sun broke through the horizon with a soft golden light, painting the abandoned outpost in warm hues. The wind had calmed overnight, leaving a quiet peace that felt almost unnatural after the chaos of the battlefield and the days of survival. Marcus Kane stirred first, checking their surroundings before waking Princess Elira. She was already awake, sitting quietly near the fire, her gaze distant. The events of the past days weighed on her, but she felt stronger, more alive than she had since the battle that had left her abandoned. She looked at Marcus as he rose to his feet, stretching his muscles after the long night. "Ready to move?" he asked. Elira nodded. "Yes, let's go." Together they left the outpost, moving through the broken terrain toward a ridge Marcus had spotted the day before. It offered a higher vantage point, where they could spot any approaching danger and hopefully see a path leading to safety. The journey was slow. Elira's body had healed somewhat, but she still walked with caution. Marcus remained close, matching his pace to hers, ready to catch her if she faltered. Each step forward strengthened her resolve and her trust in him. By midday they reached the ridge. From there the land stretched wide, dotted with ruined structures and burned forests. In the distance, faint glimmers of human patrols could be seen moving along the old roads. Marcus scanned the horizon carefully. "This way," he said finally, pointing toward a hidden path leading through the hills. "It's not perfect, but it's safe enough to reach a communication point. We can call for help from there." Elira studied the path, her heart pounding. "And if we are caught?" Marcus shook his head. "We won't be if we stay alert." Her eyes softened as she looked at him. She had begun to understand that his courage was not about recklessness. It was careful, calculated, and rooted in care, not only for himself but for those he chose to protect. As they moved along the hidden path, danger still lurked. Small patrols of scavengers and rogue machines dotted the landscape, remnants of the war. Marcus guided Elira silently through the safest routes, teaching her to move quietly, to listen to the wind, and to trust her instincts. At one point, a machine's sensors swept the path ahead, scanning for heat and movement. Marcus froze, signaling Elira to do the same. Her pulse raced as the machine paused, its glowing red eye scanning the shadows. She held her breath, her hands gripping her cloak tightly. The machine continued on without noticing them. Marcus let out a quiet sigh of relief. Elira turned to him, eyes wide. "You saved us," she whispered. Marcus only nodded. "We save each other." Her chest tightened. Words she wanted to say about gratitude, about trust, about loyalty, felt caught in her throat. Instead, she continued walking, step by careful step, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. By evening, they reached the outskirts of a small human communication outpost. The building was intact, surrounded by low walls and a few dormant turrets. Marcus led Elira inside where a small control room waited. The interior smelled of dust and metal, but it offered warmth and the promise of connection to others who could help. Marcus activated the console, sending a signal to his unit. Within hours, a response came. A human patrol was on the way to retrieve them. Relief washed over Marcus, but he did not relax completely. He remained vigilant, guarding Elira as she sat on a bench, exhausted but alert. She studied him quietly. All the lessons, all the trials had led to this moment, and she realized deeply that her respect for him had grown into something more profound. You are remarkable," she said finally. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Is that a compliment or an observation? Both, she admitted. The patrol arrived as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the land. Human soldiers moved quickly, scanning the area and securing the perimeter. Marcus introduced Alira cautiously, explaining her situation and ensuring she would be treated with care. The soldiers nodded, surprised but respectful, confirming that she was safe. As Marcus prepared to step back and let the patrol take over, he turned to Alira. You'll be safe now. I've done all I can. Alira shook her head, her emotions rising. No, I want to stay with you. You risked everything for me, Marcus. I cannot just leave. His eyes softened. You've come a long way, Alira. You've survived. You've learned, and you've chosen loyalty. Not because you have to, but because it's who you are. She reached for his hand, a bold gesture she would never have dared on the battlefield. Then let me stay. Let me learn more from you. Let me fight by your side if I must. Marcus looked at her, surprise and admiration flickering in his eyes. Slowly he nodded. All right, but you must promise to trust me even when it's difficult. I promise, she said, her voice steady. The patrol escorted them out of the outpost, providing safe passage to a larger human base. Along the way, Marcus and Alira shared quiet moments, exchanging stories of their lives before the war, learning about each other's worlds. For the first time, Alira felt a sense of belonging she had never known with her own people. She thought about the soldiers who had abandoned her, about the world she had known. And though sadness lingered, it was overshadowed by the bond she had formed with Marcus, a bond built on trust, survival, and the courage to protect another. By the time they reached the human base, night had fallen. The lights of the settlement shimmered across the hills, a welcoming beacon in the darkness. Marcus led Alira to the medical bay first, ensuring her wounds were properly treated. She sat quietly, observing him as he moved among the human soldiers with quiet authority and respect. When the medical team finished their work, Alira and Marcus stepped outside into the cool night air. Stars stretched across the sky, bright and steady. The battlefield was far behind them now, replaced by safety and the possibility of a new beginning. You saved me, Alira said softly, looking up at him. No, Marcus corrected gently. We saved each other. Her lips curved into a small smile. Perhaps that is the truth. For a long moment they stood side by side, letting the night wind carry away the memories of pain and fear. Alira realized that the human soldier beside her had not only saved her life, but had shown her a different kind of strength, a strength rooted in loyalty, compassion, and the courage to make choices that matter. Do you believe, she asked after a pause, that humans can be trusted? Marcus looked at her, his dark eyes reflecting the starlight. I believe some humans can. Some are worth following, worth protecting. And I think you just proved that you're one of them. Her heart warmed. Then perhaps your people are not so different from mine after all. We both can learn if we choose to. Marcus smiled faintly. Yes, and that choice, it makes all the difference. In the days that followed, Alira began training alongside the human soldiers, learning not just how to survive, but how to fight with purpose and intelligence. Marcus guided her patiently, correcting mistakes, offering encouragement, and letting her grow stronger with each passing day. She discovered that courage was not only in battle, but in kindness, in patience, and in the quiet moments of care. Marcus had taught her that loyalty was more than a word. It was action, choice, and heart. And through it all, their bond deepened. Words were often unnecessary. A glance, a small gesture, a shared movement in silence all spoke volumes. They had come together in the harshest of circumstances, and now they stood stronger because of it. Months later, as the sun rose over the base, Alira and Marcus stood together at the edge of the settlement, looking out toward the lands they had survived. The battlefield that had once been their nightmare was now far behind them. Alira turned to Marcus, her expression serious yet filled with quiet admiration. You taught me that strength is not only in fighting, but in choosing to protect others. I will not forget it. Marcus placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. And you taught me that even in the hardest places, loyalty and trust can still exist. That's something worth holding on to. For the first time since the battle, Alira felt truly at peace. She had survived, she had learned, and she had found a companion who shared her courage and loyalty. Together, they looked toward the horizon. The journey ahead was uncertain, but they would face it side by side, stronger and wiser for all they had endured. And in that quiet, golden dawn, the spark of something new burned brightly, a spark that promised hope, trust, and the unshakable bond between two beings from different worlds, united by choice, courage, and the simple truth that no one deserves to be abandoned.